Because if you have the same business, so let's say you have all the banquets hall and all the banquets are shut down now, what are you going to do? So from day one, when I started in a gas station business, I did think that, okay, we should be focusing in the gas station only. But it started getting harder and harder on the gas station side. So there was a lot by my gas station. I said, why don't I put a laundromat here in 2012 when the properties were cheap and when the building material was cheap and then labor was cheap. So I built a laundromat which did better than the gas station. So then the thing is that I don't do all the stuff myself. So I have specialists running the gas station, managing the gas stations. I go and buy a business, so I don't manage the banquet hall myself. I just went ahead, bought it, made a deal, and did all that. And once everything is done, and then somebody else comes and takes over, and then they manage the business, and then I forget about how I did it. So a lot of times I set up things, and now they ask me. I said I'm moving on to something else. Now I'm thinking about something else. Forget that I know something about the laundromat now, how to fix this machine or how to get into, because it's a card system. So my son-in-law manages the laundromat, and sometimes he calls me to ask how to get this report or that report. I forgot, but I did it for several years. I knew best at that time, but now he's the one who's managing. So I'm mostly focusing on real estate, and they're focusing on the other businesses.
Yes, so you're the acquisitions. Sounds
Correct.
like you're heavy in the acquisition side and not necessarily the
Correct.
ongoing management.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned that, and I like your take on this topic. But how are you managing that conversation with your investors? Because again, we hear a lot of information or a lot of teachings for passive investors, like, hey, you want to work with an operator that's focused on one asset type. So are you keeping certain investors into one type of asset type, and you have a different pocket of investors, or or are they across your entire portfolio, or how are you managing that message?
No, I have only investors for the multifamily, nothing else.
Okay.
So even before we got into the multifamily, I didn't know we could do this. Otherwise, I would have bought all the gas stations in Fort Wayne, because I have been here 20 years. So we didn't even know that. And I am only focused, and most of my investors, they trust me, they know me, they just invest when I say, okay, hey, I need 100,000 from you, and I have this deal, and they'll just send me. And most of their portal passwords and their user IDs are with me. They never log into their account. They just get the money in their bank account. I set up their bank account. I set up everything for them.
Oh, wow. Wow.
It's full service.
Most of my my investors, they are just because they know me, and they are all over the United States. Some of them have been referred by others, of course.
Gotcha. And that's what I was going to ask is how are you building up that long-term relationship, or that strong relationship with those investors? Are these people that were within your close network, or how did you nurture those relationships?
Well, the first thing, I started with my family and friends, my partners, family, friends, and people I knew for 20 years, 10 years. And I made a list of all those and put them in the CRM. And then I started last year, May, it's going to be a year now, I started a 10X multifamily investment group, a Facebook group. So I have like 4,300 members in that group, and a very active group. And I have tried to add value to that group. And I used to do every Tuesday a Zoom call, to teach others, members, to how to buy multifamily. So I was kind of coaching them and listening to their problems, because I started getting a lot of calls, because my phone number and my email is everywhere. So I thought, instead of answering calls for one person at a time, why don't I fix up 1 hour for everybody's questions and answers so that I can answer their questions. So I started having a Tuesday night call. So I had a lot of interest in that call, and I invited other people to that Zoom call. For example, if somebody is expert in cost segregation, I would invite them. I would invite attorneys. I would invite CPAs to my call. So that's how I nurtured my, and mostly, I think if you have a habit of giving, not just trying to sell something every time, I have never tried to sell anything. I have been very genuine and try to add value to anyone who calls me or contacts me. I have never tried to sell anything.
Yeah, the real estate business is funny. It's not a sales game. It's education game.
Yes.
Yeah.
People call me about laundromat. People call me about gas stations, buying gas stations. They call me single family. They call me about all kind of questions. So I try to uh, answer their questions, solve their problem very genuinely.
Yeah, and that's great. And you know, I'm a member of your Facebook group and see the value that you offer there. And you know, again, we were talking before the show. I want to thank you for the generosity and the value that you do add to the community. And you know, definitely inspired to be connected with people